before we get started, whoever printed up the brochures, it was kind of a bad computer day, so you'll notice that the inside might be sort of flipped 180 from the outside, but I refuse to throw them away. So you just have to turn on your head and do a headstand to read the inside. But the information's all there and great. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Lynn Benander, our President and CEO of Co-op Power. And she's going to talk to you about community solar and all the things good things that Co-op Power is doing, and how we might integrate more with the Putney community on some of the projects and initiatives that are coming forth through this economic summit. So I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Terrific, thank you. President and CEO, I feel more like a shepherd, actually. You know, Co-op Power is a decentralized network of local communities, and we serve any community in New England or New York that would like to apply and join our network. And we have a common office and common resources that we've put together to help in New England or New York that would like to apply and join our network. And we have a common office and common resources that we've put together to help all these communities kind of figure out what they want to do and how they want to move forward. And about 3 years ago, Tom Wegg?
I think it's about 3
years ago, that the Wyndham Energy Group applied to be a local organizing council within Co-op Power, our Northeast Regional Network. And so you're actually one of the councils that we serve. So we're delighted to be here. And local communities are self-defined. So any group of 20 Co-op Power members can pool their member equity and invest in a project and make it happen with support from the Common Office. So we can do things Putney scale, we can do things Wyndham County scale. We're kind of just here to serve the members. So it's really delightful to be able to be here and kind of share a little information. Tom Simon and Michael Bosworth are the coordinators for the Co-op Power of Southern Vermont. And so you can get more information from them. And you can also, network with them more about what's going on in Southern Vermont. I'll let you know a little bit, but they're the experts on that. So I'm going to talk with you more about the regional network, and then we'll talk specifically about what's going on in Wyndham County and maybe what kinds of other things have emerged where Co-op Power's common office resources and the equity that's collected here might be of use to help support other priorities for transitioning to a more just and sustainable way of life here in Putney, here in Wyndham County. So with that, lights, camera, action. So here, I have maybe about 15 slides I'm going to share with you just to give you some pictures of who we are and what we're doing. We're a multi-class, multiracial movement. So we really look at how to include people of color and limited resource people in this work. When Co-op Power got started, the founders didn't want to just be serving white middle class or white affluent people. They figured if that's what we accomplished at the end of the day, we would have lost. It would be a failure. That we wanted to make sure that what we were creating was a way of life that made energy accessible to everyone and made clean energy accessible to everyone and into all communities, since the most vulnerable communities, the most vulnerable people under climate change are folks without resources. So there's a very strong ethic to make sure that what we do meets the needs of everybody. So we're a multiracial, multi-class movement organizing consumers and communities to build a sustainable and just future. And we started off really just looking at sustainable future. But a lot of the more limited resource folks and people of color in our community said, you're not going to get to sustainability if you don't get to justice. Because even if you build something that's sustainable for some people and excludes others who have been traditionally excluded, it's not going to be very sustainable. So we really embraced that over the years. Co-op Power started in 2004, and the planning started in about 2002. So and hundreds of people participated in the conversation about how to get it started. So that this mission statement evolved over a several-year period. but it's one I'm very proud to serve personally. And we want to use our consumer power to create clean energy products and services, business and good jobs that our community needs. So we really, in the Common Office, that's what I do most of the time, is really listen to what the members in the local organizing councils have said is the top priority in terms of new products and services they want, new businesses they feel like they need in their community, and new jobs they want to be creating, developing to support this green economic transition that we're going through. And our question is, can we settle for anything less? It's got to be working toward environmental justice, economic justice, and social justice, because that means we'll be creating something that's just and sustainable and maybe even peaceful for all of us going forward. Right now, oh my goodness, this is out of date. We have 420 members. I thought I checked it. I'm so sorry. Anyway, 420 members, and a member is a household, so we actually have a lot of people, a lot more people involved. And of those 420 members, about 400 of them are families. And the other 20 are places like colleges and voc tech schools that we work with on green job training programs, small community organizations that work with limited resource folks in their area, and some small businesses. So, but we're mostly consumers. We have 7,000 people who have joined the mailing list to support the work that we're doing, to about 200 volunteers, and I think we're up to 26 staff at the moment. Most of all, I should say, all of our new initiatives are volunteer driven. So when we go to start a community solar initiative, like the members said, we really want to be able to support community solar projects. There's about 8 volunteers that are putting in a tremendous amount of energy to make that happen, to create that infrastructure. When we went into the energy efficiency, residential energy efficiency business, we had 3 volunteers, one of whom had 24 years experience in that area, who volunteered for 3 months and did all the business development, and fundraising to make that happen. So that's kind of, we're a volunteer-driven effort. We've put in 100 kilowatts of solar electric, more than 70 hot water systems. Those are shy by a good bit, too, at this point. Not too much, though. And then we also have buying groups that help people save money. So the local councils organize buying groups for fuel, pellets, heating oil, installations, working out deals with installers in their area. So these are the kinds of things people have saved about $100 a year on home heating oil when they've joined. We've saved about $4,000 off a $8,000 solar hot water system, $20,000 off a $50,000 solar electric system, 10% off of energy efficiency products, and this is in Massachusetts, free energy audit, insulation, and air sealing. In Vermont, we have some things that a program that Tom can tell you about, but without as many financial benefits to it. We've raised $300,000 in member equity. So when members join, they put $1,000 into the pot. They can put it in over a number of years. Low-income people put in half that, and they put it in even over a longer period of time. People can pay $10 a month toward their membership as long as they're paying in. We don't actually care when they finish paying. It's just that when that money gets there, then the local council can use it. 75% is designated for the local council to decide what to invest in. So it's really a local capital strategy. We've raised $1.2 million in business assets. Using that $300,000, we created Energia, which is a commercial multifamily energy services company, and Northeast Biodiesel, which is going to be making biodiesel out of recycled oil that will be available to you all not too distant future, and our energy efficiency products and services. We've created directly 48 jobs through the solar installation businesses that we've helped to develop, and these other businesses that I've mentioned. And we've created more than 50 other jobs in companies that we've just helped to start up, that we haven't started directly. So we're pretty excited about that. I feel like that's a great contribution. And since last March, we've raised, it's not on here, we started a member loan program, and we've raised, I'm adding up quickly, we've raised another $600,000 in member loans that have supported the biodiesel plant and our energy efficiency programs. And it means we just actually last Monday night accepted another $275,000 loan that's going to allow us to build the building for Northeast Biodiesel, which, with winter's coming, we're kind of excited about having a building for it.
If I may interrupt.
Yes.
So how does a member loan actually work for Watt Power?
So when a local council has a business development project that they want to put in place, they can say, we'd like to put in this much of our member equity. We're going to raise this much grants. So we've gotten really good at writing grants and getting grants. So we leverage member equity first with grants, and then once we see what a bank loan might be for a particular project, we offer that first to our members, minus 2%. So if the bank says it's going to be a 9% loan, we'll offer our members 7% interest, because it costs us about 2% to manage all the little loans. So we offered 7% loans for Northeast Biodiesel. We offered 5.5% loans for our energy efficiency division to add other crews on. And the community solar projects that we're working on, we're looking at probably offering 4% loans to members. So once we get the business plan developed, and we look at what the risk is, and we look at what the market rate is for loans in that category, then we put a member loan program together. And it gives us a lot more. Small businesses are often very highly leveraged, and so that's why they go out of business, is because they don't make those loan payments on time. And the bank says, give me the collateral you pledged. And then they end up having to sell it, often at tremendous loss, and they go out of business. With Co-op Power, our community capital strategy, our members are patient investors, and we tell people, with the Northeast Biodiesel loans, this is a high-risk loan in a new commodity industry. It's a startup business. You could lose all your principal. So do you still really want to make this loan? And with the solar arrays, we have we have a big asset that's underwriting that, so it's a much lower risk. So we try to give members a very accurate portrayal of what the risk is for making this investment. But what feels really good to me is, because we're investing in these things together, they actually have a lot lower risk profile, because we're not likely to call the investment, which is what puts things out. Often a business, if you just give it a little more time, it can figure out how to make those payments. It can figure out what adjustments do we need, in order to become profitable. What we're doing now isn't quite working in the marketplace. So I'm excited that we're kind of part of the slow money movement, where we're putting our money in, and we're actually paying back loans. We have been over the years. We've paid back member loans, but it's a patient kind of capital that can build the assets that we need in order to make this transition. So it's a model that you can use in other areas. Like, we're not going to go into food, but this particular financial model could be used to create the kind of community assets you need to transition to a more sustainable and just food system. So we're pretty excited about just contributing this financial model to the mix. And because we're a multiracial, not because we're multiracial, because we're multi-class cooperative, we have people that are very welcome amongst us who have a lot of money, as well as people who have no money. But when you create a space where people, no matter what their assets are welcome, people with money are very happy to bring those assets in. So I think it's a little bit revolutionary in our in our society that is allergic to talking about class. That we can have people, I remember one day we had a big, huge party at one of our annual events. We had a Cuban band going, and everyone was on the dance floor. These two people were dancing, and then the woman came over to me and she said, "You didn't tell me who I was dancing with." She said, "He's the funder that provides most of the money for our organization to run." Anyway, she just had no idea. She thought everybody was just like her that was there, and everybody was just like her that was there. We're all human beings, really, at the bottom line. And so I think Co-op Power has gotten kind of good at that, figuring out how we connect as human beings and share the resources we have. And whether it's a lot of money or a little money, or a lot of time, a little time, a lot of expertise, a little expertise, we're all in there kind of making it happen together. I think that is the heart of what makes this movement work. What is working here, it's working because of that particular element. And so, anyway, I am giving a slideshow. I have to keep going here. We're also a progressive employer. We've hired a lot of kids out of limited resource communities and trained them and gotten them jobs that they wouldn't have been able to get. And we're really proud of that. And when one of them can't get to work because he's finished the training program or she's finished the training program but doesn't have a car, or money to get first and last month's rent or something, I put an email out to the 7,000 people on our mailing list and say, "Anybody have an extra car?" And I get 5 emails back saying, "I'm getting ready to get a new one. I could, and then Alex gets a car, so he can get to work." And so we're really, and sometimes I'll say, this family, there's a single mom and 2 kids. I really want to she has great resources. She wants to come volunteer at Co-op Power, but she can't unless we can somehow get her some resources, a good place to live. And does anybody have an extra room? You want to provide room and board for 6 months. And we've put up a lot of people that way. So it makes the volunteer arena in Co-op Power also accessible to people with limited resources, which if it was just wealthy, kids who had wealthy parents that could afford to let them volunteer for a while, or people who had a lot of money that could volunteer, I don't think we would be as effective too. But because of the generosity of this membership base, we're able to really build on a lot of that. And let's see, I already talked a little bit. We've supported the development of 9 other businesses, 42 jobs, 6 solar installation businesses, 2 green electricians, window restoration, and thermal window insert business. Trained about 120 people and provided business development assistance to a bunch of other projects. And we're looking at power purchase program for the solar energy systems, renewable energy credit aggregation so we can get better prices for our RECs and our solar RECs. We consulted with a hydro project in upstate New York, community wind on the Cape, district heating in Greenfield, a little bit here with the district heating system project in Brattleboro, just a little. Green cleaning business in Pittsfield, a green cemetery in Western Mass. We're going a little away from energy, but we're a member-driven organization, so I kind of do what our members ask, but we try to stay as focused on energy as possible. But I did learn a lot about green cemeteries. It's worth checking out. It is. It's really, really important. Let's see. I went the wrong way. We helped write grants. So the town of Shelburne in Mass got $150,000. We consulted a little bit on a lot of other town grants going in. We have a volunteer energy efficiency team that provides efficiency upgrades. And this deep roots idea is really, I believe that community ownership, or Co-op Power believes that who owns it matters. And if we're not pooling our assets and owning the things that we depend on, we're missing a phenomenal opportunity. We saw what happens with the fossil fuel industry that's owned largely not by local communities. And we don't want to replicate the sustainable energy industry to follow in that path. I was at the Aspen Institute as a visiting scholar a couple months ago. And it's this think tank, supposedly progressive think tank. I just said that online, didn't I? It's a think tank, a progressive think tank. Anyway, they had Sunrun and Solar City, two big solar leasing companies, and they had Duke Energy sitting on this panel. And I was concerned about solar leasing before because what it looked like to me as a community ownership advocate, what we're doing is we're really giving away our rooftops for decades to another company. And these rooftops are prime solar receptor sites. So when you go to sell your house, if you've already given away that asset and it's somebody else would like to actually own their own system or doesn't want to participate in that lease if the terms aren't that useful, it might not be a great idea. But Duke Energy sat there, one of the largest utilities in the country, right? And he was like mocking them and said, yeah, go ahead. You're doing such great work. Everybody's going to buy out. And then I'm going to buy you out. My cost of capital is less than yours. As soon as I get into the industry, I'm buying all your rooftops. So you're selling your rooftop to Sunrun or Solar City or somebody, but I don't know if that makes you uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable. I don't want to have. And so, plus, I'm also someone who is very concerned about the transfer of public wealth to private hands. It's kind of part of the religion in the United States that we like to do that as much as possible, but I'm in another camp. I don't think that's such a great idea. So whenever you put up a solar system, you get a 30% tax credit now without cap. So if you put up a $20 million solar system, you get 30% of that back, that value of the asset, back in cash. So if we were all doing our own, community projects or our own individual projects, that 30% would be coming back to us. But when large corporations put systems up on millions of households, a third of the value of all of those assets comes off of the tax rolls and into that corporation's pockets. Now, that looks like the transfer of public wealth to private hands to me, in my definition. Does that resonate with anybody? I don't talk about this much because I feel a little crazy, but
It's a little hokey.
Is it?
I don't think anyone around here has embraced leasing their rooftops out.
That you haven't.
No.
There's a lot of people where I live that are doing it. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned. I feel like owning our assets is really important.
I just looked at a list of small hydro projects across the state. There were about 14, and it looked like they had, in the last 5 years, been collaboratively scooped up by larger corporations. As an example.
Yes. Yeah. So I think we've got some research. I'm in my little world and just trying to build as much capital as we can and then help people use it really well to build local things. But I think we need more research as a community about what's the other side of that equation, what's happening when we don't do that. So I'd love to see more. I know the Institute for Local Self-Reliance out in Minnesota does research on these things and probably has some statistics that I need to get a hold of. We all do.
If I understood what Michael just said, it sounds like a warning that one thing that your organization would have to do is be vigilant to watching out for and analyzing corporate's behavior, because if I understand that, corporate basically intruded into a concept and took it over.
I was looking at an intervention filed with the Board of Public Service Board by John Warshaw, who used to be a student of mine at Harvard, to talk about the kind of rates that were being changed by this overall conglomerate. In other words, they were starting to pump up what were being locally controlled rates. And Warshaw was saying, but I helped create some of those local products, those local projects, those local dam projects for the villages where they're placed. And they had to fight to get intervention into the PSB case. And I looked at the list of interveners versus the list of projects, and it looked like what had been a total of 21 local dam projects, which were named by the Public Service Board, that they were now grouped into 3 parties because the in the last 5 years, out of, I think they're all out of state ownership, had bought each of the small village projects and bought them into larger power conglomerates, but then were collaboratively upping the rates and acting basically the way any large power and utility does. So it was really moving it beyond the concept of its creation.
Yes. So it's one thing to create community-owned assets, and it's another thing to retain them. I've done a lot of research on retaining. My background is in cooperative development, so I've done a lot of research on building worker-owned co-ops, consumer-owned co-ops, producer co-ops, and what it takes to retain those assets as community-owned assets, and where the interventions come in to take them away. I think it's, we need more research on the community scale projects, the municipally owned projects. I mean, we know when municipalities, we know that they do privatize commonly owned resources. And we, I'm sure if we went around, we could make a list of, when does that happen? They're short on cash. They want immediate cash versus, long-term asset. They want immediate cash to the municipality versus long-term savings to the residents of that community. There's not enough education. Usually education is the key to preventing the privatization of common resources. The people in the cooperatives need to know, people in the municipalities need to know what the value is of it to them, and then what their voice is in retaining, what their governance role is in retaining those assets. But it's a big part of what we're looking at Co-op Power, and what we need to be studying together. But I want to tell you a little bit more about creating the assets, and I promise we are looking together at how to retain them too as we go along. But I'm wondering, do you mind, Tom, talking a little bit about Brattleboro Food Co-op?
Sure.
And we could put lights back on again.
When we originally talked about forming a local organizing council here in southern Vermont, we were looking at a number of different projects that we might be able to take on. It was a little bit different from, I think, when Co-op Power started, because there was a project already there, and that the members that originally were with Co-op Power wanted to be able to process used vegetable oil into a fuel.
It took us about 2 years to decide on that project.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know, it was just part of that
I thought that was
2-year
already in
development
place.
process.
But, so we really didn't have a project when we started. But the group with Daniel, the Wyndham Energy Group, we had a vision of promoting renewable energy development in southern Vermont. And we looked at a lot of different models, a lot of different business structures on how best to do that. And we settled on co-op. And we thought that was the best way to go. It may not be perfect, but we haven't found anything better. So we're with it. But we looked at a number of different projects as far as small hydro on the Sackett's Brook. Putney was looking into that. Geothermal in Bellows Falls has been investigated. Londonderry, Stratton have been looking at hydro and small wind, or a little bit larger wind. So these were all types of projects that we thought we might be able to get involved in and help support on a community basis. And then we found that the Brattleboro Food Co-op wanted to put solar panels on the new building, but they hadn't been able to raise enough funds to be able to do it as soon as the roof was finished. So we talked with them to see if they would be interested in having us help them with that project, so they wouldn't have to wait 3 or 4 years down the road. And they were very receptive, so that became our first project here in southern Vermont. We took Wyndham County on as an area to start with. We didn't want to just pick too small an area, but yet we didn't want to get too large either. And Wyndham County seemed like a good distance, driving for meetings and things like that, people getting together. So that's really how we started. But we're not tied to that. There's an option that Putney could become its own local organizing council in southern Vermont. And then we would just have 2. And that's fine. We would have another project to work on, which is what we want to do. We want to promote renewable energy here. And it's going to take more than one project to get us to where we want to go. It's going to take a lot of them, but you start with one. And so I think that's how we've gotten started. And let's see, we had, I think, 12 members before we even started a local organizing council. So there were already 12 people or families in southern Vermont that had heard about co-op power, supported them, and became members. And
most of those joined because they were interested in supporting the biodiesel plant.
Yeah.
Because Greenfield isn't too far away. I know it's another land, but it's not too far.
And we're up to 44 members now, with probably another dozen in the pipeline. And
That's great.
People contacting us. Just had a couple people contact the other day looking for more information. So we're growing, and hopefully this next week we'll have another or a solar installer chosen, and we're anticipating having the system installed by the end of the year. So we've got our work cut out for us on this one.
So as soon as we pick the installer, we have bids from 3, 5, 4. I knew I was close. 4 installers, and so we're comparing them and deciding which one to choose. And we'll get that. We'll finalize the business plan. We're also we're in conversation with a couple high net worth individuals who can remember that 30% tax credit I talked about earlier. We really need to have people who can take the tax credit and the depreciation off of their own personal taxes or their corporation's taxes in order to get the cost to the Brattleboro Food Co-op down as low as possible. So we're in conversation with a couple people. We haven't quite finalized that yet, but once we get that finalized, we've got quite a few people that want to make a member loan to make that happen. And we'd be interested in talking about any of that with any of you if you're interested in joining, making a loan, or if you are a high net worth individual or know somebody is who, could really help us with the depreciation and the tax credits. We'd be really excited about that too. But we've got a good bit of money to raise, maybe, I don't know, about $50,000, $60,000 we have to raise in member loans and member equity in order for Co-op Power to own that system on the Brattleboro Food Co-op's roof. And then we'll sell the electricity to the food co-op to run their operations. So it's a very exciting local project. And there's a few members of the organizing group here that have put that together with a lot of hard work.
So the idea is that we'll, in a roundabout way, sell the Brattleboro Food Co-op electricity for 5 years. They're going to purchase the system from us at about that point, and we'll be able to take the funds that the co-op has invested in that project and roll those into other projects here in southern Vermont. So it's not like it's just geared towards co-op or geared towards one particular project. We're hoping that this will expand, grow. 2 or 3 years down the road, hopefully we'll be investing in 5 different projects in southern Vermont. We're receptive to helping individual communities if they want to, branch off on their own and have their own particular projects. We've got the structure and the expertise to do that. So, for anyone that was in the Michael Schumann meeting this afternoon, this is definitely a viable alternative as far as supporting local renewable energy projects.
Yes.
I had a talk with Tom actually in front of the Brattleboro Co-op a long time ago, and where he sketched this out for me. And when it came tonight, it didn't even occur to me that this might be a venue to support something that I had been cooking up for the last year and a half, which is actually aimed at low-income households. We've been going. I and some friends in Montpelier have been going forward with something that I'm going to be talking about here in the library or somewhere in Putney on the 15th of November, about preparing for long-term electrical outages. And that would be particularly stressful for households that rely on oil burner forced air heating systems, which in New England is about 85% of the households in any kind of dense housing. And so what I have been trying to do, in part with Tom, who is an electrical engineer, has been to design a system, and then ultimately it felt like to provide the parts for a kit that would allow a household that had been reliant on such a system to switch over to a DC inverter system that would run the oil furnace in the event of a long-term power outage, where the family members would rely on a combination of a second floor mounted solar panel plus a bicycle run generator in the basement, because it would mean the entire town would be without power, and hence people wouldn't be going to work, and allowing the batteries that would be in a bank in the basement to be recharged and to keep the furnace running, so people in the household would at least be able to deal with the keeping the kids warm, basically. So that project we had not actually sketched out the costs of, but we knew that part of it had a nonprofit preparing people for an extensive disaster side, and also had a for-profit providing the parts from the kids side. And it occurs to me that this might be exactly the kind of environment to discuss that sort of thing. Because the profit entity is called postelectric.com, and the other side is that we'll be talking about here in the library is something called shared sufficiency, instead of self-sufficiency in disasters, for networking people to have skills. So I'm really glad actually to be here. It wasn't my thought when I first arrived, but it seems like this might be exactly the environment to discuss it. And the second point I want to make is that I was in Venezuela actually talking with Hugo Chavez for several hours about 4 years ago, and he at that time was talking about making loans substantial loans to enterprises of this sort through the profits that were being made through Joe Kennedy's Citizens Oil. And I have a recording of that entire meeting that I was making, and I would like to share that with you at some point, so you can see
I'd like to listen to it.
happening to those funds.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be exciting. What I thought I'd do is just record ideas that you have for projects where you might like, that are energy-related projects that you might like to raise local capital to support, where a structure like co-op power might be useful.
Actually, a question that might turn into maybe another point, but are you in the business of coordinating? I'm assuming that when you're assisting a low-income house with solar electric, they're going to may have difficulty using the tax credits. So do you coordinate, the transfers of those tax credits to those and aggregating them?
We've only done solar hot water installations for low-income people, but one of the hopes that people have, that the co-op power members have for this community solar project, is that it can actually be the local owner of the arrays.
Right.
And we just put them on any rooftop that has sun. That's an excellent site for solar, whether it's a low-income person's or not, and that we get them the electricity at the same or less than what they're paying now.
And then you identify the individuals that have the tax appetite to take that.
Yes, and we have maybe about 150 high net worth individuals who have kind of said, I'm interested in the kind of projects you have.
Right.
So it's always kind of a match, like exactly what kind of projects do you like, and making that, and is this a good time? And so so that network has been very helpful in getting the money together that we've raised so far.
Well, Putney did do a feasibility study for microhydro on the Sackett's Brook. And it did turn out to be feasible, but only with grant funding or some kind of creative investor funding. So, it's
How do you spell Sackett's?
S-A-C-K-E-T-T-S, is that right? Yeah.
I'm showing I'm not from around here.
So, if we could creatively raise the money for a project in Putney like that,
Yep.
it would power between 12 and 26 households, depending on the size of the equipment and pipe.
Yep.
And stock pipe and materials.
Other questions or project ideas? Yeah.
I have an idea. Could sound very naive to most of you folks, but a lot of you guys know me, so you know I don't know a lot about these things, so it's okay for me to ask it. I was just reading in Time magazine. It seems like, wow, all the solar panels that used to be made in America, we're not really making them now. They're being made in China. And is it naive to say, could we make our own solar panels here in America? Is that possible to do with all our unemployed people? And could we create our own battery storages here in America with whatever the raw materials are? That's something that could happen here in America as unemployment is out of control and keep getting worse. Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Because we're doing the biodiesel manufacturing, we've learned a lot. It's a $3.2 million project that we're building. We raised about $2.5 million of that money to make it happen. And what we're learning is manufacturing is expensive. There's not, it's not so easy to start up, especially in an industry that the local banks and people aren't that familiar with. But it's possible if you can build a market for locally produced components. So, and I think we might be able to. Certainly on small scale manufacturing, I think there are a lot of opportunities for us.
What's the fuel source for the biodiesel plant?
Recycled oil, cooking oil from local restaurants and food processing centers.
I would be interested in, because I've been looking at this from the point of view of employee safety. Another project, back to some work I was hired to do about 3 years ago, but long-standing is the outcome of manufacturing in China, of course, is that there's a fair amount of ignoring of the environmental consequences of manufacturing.
Yeah.
So the fact that many solar panels are made in China isn't just simply that it's less expensive there, but there may be environmental hazards involved with the production of solar panels, which can be ignored in China either through corruption and breaking of environmental laws that exist, or just that the environmental laws don't exist in the first place. So it may greatly up the cost of manufacturing if you do, in fact, honor the environment in making solar panels. So that's part of the fiscal planning for such a thing. We would have to be researched why
Yes.
all those panels are made in
Yeah.
China.
Yeah, you could look at Evergreen had manufacturing facilities in Massachusetts, and they don't anymore.
Yeah, moved
They
to
tried.
China. So just to put it on the tape, the comment is that solar panel manufacturing may have gone to China just because there's a lot of costs that can be avoided if you don't have the same environmental requirements and labor requirements that we have here in the United States. So just to look to see whether we can actually make a panel that's competitively priced that people would buy.
Batteries too, storage.
And batteries. Absolutely.
On the other hand, on a bright note, Stiebel Eltron, a German company, is taking up manufacturing panels and other equipment in Hadley or Holyoke, Mass. I forget.
Hatfield.
Hatfield, that's it. I knew it
Yeah.
began with an H. So they're a great company, and I support their products.
Yeah. They're not actually manufacturing the panel itself.
But
They're fabricating.
Right.
They're taking the the parts and pieces and putting the panels together there. So it's a great next step. We keep talking to Frank Stiebel saying, "So when are you going to bring some of this?" Anyway, but it's exciting to have him bringing as much as he has here to the U.S. and to our region. Other ideas or questions?
I think a lot of it has to do with educating ourselves and realizing that we have been taking advantage of the environment in many ways, and feeling like the lowest cost is always the best fruit. Looking at food production, realizing that we may have to pay a little bit more for locally raised food, but in the end, it's probably worth every penny. The same for energy generation, as far as electrical generation with fossil fuels, nuclear power. Our generation has taken advantage with low-cost electrical generation, but it's had some effects. And it may be that we're starting to come to the point where we realize that we have to pay a little bit back and not depend on future generations to absorb all of the costs of the low-cost energy that we've been enjoying for many years. And hopefully that doesn't strike too hard a chord with anyone, but I think that's a reality that we, as a generation, have to face.
I'd like to add a coda to my own comment
Yes,
about
please.
environmental cost.
We're really running.
Okay, I'll make it quick.
So, yeah.
All right, I'll make it quick. Which is that not all of China and all of Chinese are screwing up. That I have this other project which I have, which is like human state. We're evaluating and doing certification of different manufacturers. There are manufacturers who are responsible, who care about the environment. And some Chinese manufacturers are reinvesting back to North America and back to South America. And it is possible that some of the funding can come from China to here, or that part of the components can be manufactured in China by responsible manufacturers and then secondarily assembled here. So that's another option.
Yes. Well, it's been delightful talking with you all. Thanks so much for your time. And stay in touch with Tom. And I'm glad also, I've got cards. I've got some handouts that I'll put out over here, an essay on our financial model that if you're interested in actually applying it to other projects, you might want to grab a copy of that. I have a membership application form. Tom gave you the brochure, and I also have a summary of the Brattleboro Food Co-op project if you'd like to pick up that. So I'll just put them over here. Is that all right?
Great, yes, your
Terrific.
brochures and whatnot are here. Thank you so much.
Terrific.